Hello and welcome back to another Monster Hunter Wilds walk along. This time we'll be taking a deep dive into the Scarlet Forest and exploring it in a little more detail than before. We'll be starting in the morning time during the plenty, and throughout this we will see some fallow weather as well. A lot of this forest has very good landmarks that you can help use to navigate as signposting throughout the forest, and we'll be mentioning them here and there. The first landscape that you see while starting to enter the forest itself true is vertical laid rotting tree jutting out into the water's edge. Here we can see another Lagiacrus, this time in the Scarlet Forest. They are most notably seen in the Windward plains and the more swampy river areas. Them being both here in a desert climate as well as a deep forest. In my endemic life video, I never ended up mentioning the Omenflies, just because there's not really much to talk about with them. Though, that being said, they do mechanically have a cool function to the player in that their tails will change color to a red tone when there are large monsters nearby, giving the player an organic way of detecting a threat that they might not necessarily hear or see at the moment. These were also originally seen in Monster Hunter World. You can see some of the Wudwuds searching for various, I'm going to assume, shiny things, as we can see them actually capable of fishing later on. And for the Wudwuds, very much like their small little knickknacks to collect and gather. We're going to send a Kahoot up real quick to take a look at the diorama version of the Windward Plains from the distance. This will give you a good idea of roughly where we started in the forest, as later on you'll be seeing just how large this forest really is when you're walking through it. Later on we'll be seeing quite a few more Wudwuds throughout the forest. They have a shocking amount of interactions that have been placed in the forest that a lot of players might have never seen. I might do a video on just Wudwuds at some point. Here we can see some Harpios as well as some other various fauna. We'll be getting a closer look at Harpios up ahead. Here we can see a series of cascading multi-step waterfalls. I'll show an aerial screenshot of what this looks like, as they are quite pretty from above. There's quite a few different angles where you can see this from, and we'll be seeing one from an elevated spot later on as well. Right in this little crevice here, if you have a Lagiacrus on the map, they will sleep in this location. So if you get the chance, you might be able to spot one doing so. There is a lot of spots that I think the player would be surprised that you can clamber up without the need of a Seikret, and here's just one example of that. Now we'll be passing through the Bramble, which is on the southwest side of the map. This is another very good visual location to help the player find their way around. Though in an ironic twist, not many of the monsters tend to come over here. Only ones I can think of off the top of my head that I've seen here regularly is Ufduna and Doshaguma. So the use of the Bramble tends to be very limited as a result of that, which is a shame because it is a very beautiful place for how dangerous it appears. Here we can see a Harpios. I won't be going too much into detail here about them. I plan on doing a video on small monsters, and they will end up being a featured monster in that list. Though there is one thing I wanted to make note of, and that if you have been keeping up with Monster Hunter news about the expansion, you might notice something familiar with the skeleton they're using for these Harpios. We do a quick pan around here. Try to put this area to memory, as we'll be seeing it through a few other different view angles. The areas we are starting to enter is what I like to refer to as the heart of the forest. It is rather fairly centralized within the Scarlet Forest in the more dense foresty area locations of it. And it can be easily distinguished by all of the parasitic and carnivorous flora that you can find scattered around it. Always look for these various flora to help help recenter your location. Here is the entrance to the Flowering Rocks campsite. This is a very safe campsite and is fairly centralized on the base level of the forest. Though later on I will be pointing out another campsite that I find quite valuable to players who want to limit the amount of fast travel they are doing. I do not believe the story gives you any reason to enter here, so if you haven't seen this, it is a very beautiful campsite and a good place for a few resources as well. This spot not only has quite the abundance of fish and rare flora to collect, but this ancient Werven coin here spawns very often if you end up resetting here a lot. We bumped into our Wudwud friend, Mastangler. All the Wudwuds, instead of having personalized names or surnames passed down through family generations, they instead are named after their occupation. In certain places in Europe, specifically Germany, there are a lot of surnames where you are named occupationally. If you ever have the time, I'd recommend reading up about nominative determinism. It has quite a few funny points on naming conventions. It gives some interesting insight into surnames and work life. Over here we can see a dormant Rafflesia flower. I unfortunately did not manage to get the timing correct and missed all 3 opportunities to find a blooming Rafflesia on our route. On screen I will show a picture of what it looks like when it's bloomed, as well as one when it's wilted. These are shockingly accurate to the real-life Rafflesia equivalents. These are probably the most evil plants in the world. They are parasitic in that they will grow through the lower stems of other plants and completely take over them. The ones depicted in-game are slightly exaggerated in size, but not too far off from the real-world Rafflesia. The rarity of this flower spawning is also reflective of the real-life Rafflesia, in that real Rafflesias only bloom for about a week, and then they'll just completely die off after they finish pollinating. The way these pollinate is they smell like rotting corpses. I've seen some people describe them as smelling like rotting fish specifically, and this will attract carrion flies as well as other various insects that will then carry the pollen from this flower outwards to other locations. We're going to jump down on these rooted vines. You can find these many various locations in the Scarlet Forest, and they are mostly meant to serve as a means for the Seikret to traverse the forest quickly and avoid the lower shelves where various monsters could be. Down here again, we can see the many various waterfalls that we originally started our journey near. You'll begin to see very quickly how many twists and turns and loops this forest has. A lot of people will make note of the ancient forest in Monster Hunter World as being very complex to navigate, but if you do not have access to the Seikret in the Scarlet Forest, the density of this forest in comparison is even more complex. Now we're going to head over to the Canopies and get a better view of things from above. Here at the distance, you can see just the tip of the large structure in the Windward Plains, and that is towards the direction we started. Down here, a Sacred exclusive path. If you glance down here, you can see a path that leads to Lagiacrus Nest. You can just barely make out the red threads from here. Some Dapperwings. We'll be seeing plenty of them during the plenty. I talked about these on my endemic life video if you want to hear a little more about them, but talking about them in a small part of a head. Here we can see a male Dapperwing attempting to do a courting dance to find a mate. Seems that no one is interested. Poor little guy. Up here in the Treetop Hill Camp of Area 18 in the Canopy, this is probably the best location if you want to minimize your amount of travel, but still use Sacrets as a means to get around the map. This location branches to almost every location on the Scarlet Forest, excluding the large waterfalls to the northwest of the map. You see a little Wudwud nesting on the ruined side cliff here, and there is an animation for them getting settled into this sleeping location. You can make these guys react if you shoot them with a bow gun. And I thought I'd be able to make them react by shooting a stone at them, but they did not. Up to the right side here is another entrance to a canopy that is one way, and there's not much reason to even go here except for exploring. And down here to the other side, you can see a camp jutted out on a cliff edge. We will be making our way down there later, so it's worth making a note of its location as well as this sacred path that you can take down the canopy to here, as these locations are fairly close to the multi-step waterfalls we passed through near the beginning. He's still going at it. Maybe one day, the little Dapperwing will find true love. we managed to spot a Dazzlewing. When I was rooting this, as well as recording, I stumbled across a shocking amount of Dazzlewing. I guess if you're not looking for it, it's always going to be there. Here we can see a Wyvern Nest. As far as I know, only the Raffs come here, so it's safe to say this is Raff exclusive. If you've played any of the old Monster Hunters, you may be very familiar with egg quests. And if you did the crossover events with Monster Hunter Stories Free for this game, you may have gotten a taste of how chaotic and difficult the egg quests of all things can be, where you are tasked with taking an egg back to a camp, and in some cases, multiple eggs. In the older games, it was very funny because the devs would troll the player by cutting off certain paths of the map with giant boulders that would just appear out of thin air. And it would force the player to find a different route while usually getting chased down by something extremely aggressive. Out on the edge of this canopy, we can see the Oilwell Basin as well as the Iceshard cliffs covered in the fog. One thing this game does really well above anything else is making the world feel interconnected. And if you watched my previous walk along, you will see just how much that is true. With this canopy as well, if you look down, there is a sacred path leading up and down here to a location that many players have never really gone to. In my previous walk along, there were quite a few people commenting on vines in general. So I will be showing throughout this video how quickly you can navigate these vines by running, as well as walking up and down them. In this lower bed here is said location that we don't see much reason to ever go to. If you glance down from here, you can see a path leading to a place Congalada likes to frequent. And if you look up, that's where we just were. Now we'll be heading down this other path that leads back to the heart of the forest that is exclusive to Seikret. Here we can see some more Harpios, but this time they aren't in the more aquatic location. I guess this kind of implies that they might consume insects underground, as you can see them pecking at the ground in various locations. Though that could be simply that they didn't want to bother disabling the peck animation when they fly away from the more water location. Do you recognize that roar? I'll give you a bit to figure it out as we approach it. It was a Mizutsune, and quite a large one at that. When I glanced at it, I assumed it was a gold crown, but it was only a silver. So I assumed this must be very close to the threshold of being a gold crown. Mizutsune are extremely aggressive, so we're going to be extra careful. Though, given this one's only 4 strength, it's very unlikely it would one-shot me with this random gear I've equipped. Now we're almost near the beginning of the Scarlet Forest. If you keep following this path past the dead bark laid against the side of this river path, it will lead you straight to the start. To the side here, you can see Lagiacrus Den, putting us on the now southeastern side of the map. And if you see this sacred path leading up the tree, that is the top of the Canopies where I pointed out the Lagiacrus Nest you could barely see. Oops. I thought I had stones, not spark flint. I wanted to show everyone something. Oh well. Maybe I'll show it at a later time. Some sleeping mimipitas that you can spot here. They are very cute. I recommend observing them in the various times, as they have quite a lot of different things they will participate in. Here we can see some Poisoncups, an extremely exaggerated version of a pitfall trap carnivorous plant that you would see in real life. These ones are quite large and hold a almost gaseous poison upon tripping them. We're going to be following this path on the eastern side of the map, heading north to make our way to the other various locations. Here we can spot a conga napping. All of the small monsters, including large monsters, have snoring noises. Here we can see a dark hornet nest adjacent right next to a large bee colony. I wonder if these two have interactions with each other. Are they territorial to one another? Or maybe the hornets feed on the bee colony to some degree. And speaking of massive bee colonies, there are two of these colonies, and we'll see one up ahead in a little bit. These bee colonies may seem strange, as normally you traditionally see beehives in the more circular shapes, like the ones we gather honey from often. But these large platforms strewn upon the cliffs reflects some types of real-life bees, and one such species of bees resides in the Himalayas, as you can see in this image here. We're going to send the cahoots out one more time so we can get a better look at this land spine that seems to be inactive based on the various flora that has overgrown it. These Quatreflies here are used to indicate the various locations of camps, which would have been a lot more interesting had we not been guided so heavily. but the fact that they are here is a nice attention. And if you listen closely, they have this pleasant paper sound to them. Some various crickets here. I enjoy these smaller insects that they scatter throughout various locations, as not everything needs to be massive. Having these smaller creatures roaming about that the player never has a reason to interact with outside of collection helps bring more life to these locations and not be strictly gameplay. And here's the second colony, much larger than the first. If you do not decimate Kangalala, they will often come here on their last breaths to rest. Here we can see another sacred tree that we will be going up after we take a short detour. You may have spotted it earlier when we were near the Quatreflies. You can see these various spores coming off of these colonies of mushrooms on these decaying trees that have collapsed in the forest. It makes for a lovely sight. And up here, a path that conjoins with the other sacred path to lead us up a waterfall later on. It seems like many of the fish came here from the upper waterfalls, or possibly some other small nearby water sources that we aren't able to see. It's possible that they could be trapped down here, though in the cave we will enter soon, there could be connecting tunnelways that the player is not able to access that allows these fish to make their way back upstream. Here's a school of Starduster fish. The devs did a really good job of making a school of fish interact and behave in a way that feels realistic to schools of fish in real life. An odd amount of detail for something that most players will not notice or even interact with. Here we're entering the underground lake. I recommend putting a tent here, as this can be a good place for getting a quick amount of zenny if you are still fairly new to the game, as you can toss your net into the fishing holes here and gather a bunch of golden fish very quickly that you can sell for zenny later on. This spot ended up becoming quite notorious with that, to a degree that the devs themselves ended up changing how these spawns for these fish interact with when you shoot a net into the water, slowing down the amounts of zenny you can pile up. But it still serves as a nice place when you're in a pinch and don't want to sell monster parts that you may end up using later. As well with this, if you continue to cross the water over here, there can sometimes be some very rare fish spawns that you may want if you are a collector. We're not looking at the Gagios here, but in the distance you can see some Vespoids resting on this rotting log that has collapsed. And they will get aggressive if you approach them. Now for a rather unique interaction that can occur in this spot, as well as a few others. If you steal this giant Vigorwasp nectar that it is carrying, it will start to panic. But as the effect ends, it will go and seek out the Vita Lily nearby it and harvest more nectar, even depleting the Vita Lily of its effects. Just one of the many interactions that are very easy to miss when you are focusing on hunting. Now we're going to saddle up and climb up this sacred path that will lead us to the waterfalls near the Wudwud Hideouts, as well as Lagiacrus Nest. This waterfall, as well as quite a few of the other waterfalls located throughout the Scarlet Forest, allow you to jump down them. This can be especially relevant in this location, where you can encounter multiple dangerous large monsters, such as Lagiacrus, Arkveld, Ufduna, and this can serve as a quick way to escape if you do not want to risk getting on your Seikret. These stone ruins straight ahead are the Wudwuds camp. I recommend making note of them, as it will be central to helping you navigate the northern half of the forest. Cute sleeping Gagios. I would let you hear the snores, but the waterfall is a bit loud here. Maybe I'll make a video about small monsters snoring. I'm going to be heading into Lagiacrus Den real quick to take a little peek. we're going to send our Guku in real quick to take a little dive underwater. And here you can see that they keep loaded in some of the structures and interactables, even if you don't go under the water here. This being where you stand off against Lagiacrus in his underwater segment. Though I talked about this briefly before in my other walk. Off to the side here is a path with many resources that the player can gather very quickly and will eventually lead us to a small ruins on the other end. I'm just going to let this play out, so enjoy watching and listening. Up here on the other end, it won't be too easy to tell, but if you peek through the various holes on the side up here, these ruins, we will be able to go clamber on the outside of this eventually, as we are adjacent to the Wudwuds Hideout. So make note of this location, and I will mention it later. For now, though, we are going to be taking a very far walk across the area we were just in, and meet up at a location that will seem familiar. So let's go walk there right now. If you notice, that is the first bee colony that we saw. We have linked back up by doing a counterclockwise circle on the higher grounds of the eastern side. Here are these carnivorous plants. As I stated before, if you are to follow these, this would bring you back to the heart of the forest. An easy signpost to find your way around with. These ruins are cute as there's just a lot of fauna that likes to show up here, as well as various Wudwuds who will peek in and out occasionally. Traveling through this crevasse, we stumble upon a very aggressive Raff and some maybe too brave Congas. I think they should have reconsidered what they were approaching. If you've noticed it started to drizzle, that is because we have entered the fallow season, and you will be able to see the waters turned red from all the various saps of the trees getting washed away down. Did you remember this camp I pointed out earlier? As well as this sacred path. This is leading back up to the Canopies where we were earlier, and serves as a shortcut to get to this location. These wedge beetles, scattered through the various locales, can be gathered with a capture net. So if you're in the mood to troll some of your friends, you can steal it right from under them. This camp spot is not particularly useful. I just find it a pleasant place to hang out and enjoy the views. That being said, it is fairly isolated. And with the changes to how large monsters interact with tents, you'll almost never see this tent get destroyed anymore. Though it used to get destroyed before the changes to how large monsters interact with tents. Won't be much to say for a little bit. We're going to be heading upstream, so enjoy the walk. Now we are back in the central northern part of the forest, and again you can see the Wudwud Hideout. And just to the left of that, on these creeping vines, this is the ruins that we swam under next to Lagiacrus Den to gather various resources. The Wudwuds Hideout is our final destination, but we will be taking a brief tour of the northwestern section of the Scarlet Forest. You might have missed it, but there was some vines up above us that we will be using to fly all the way to these climbing vines over here. This unstable rubble seems rather insignificant if you have not been hunting in the Scarlet Forest regularly, but it can be used to interrupt the path of any swimming large monster that is trying to head towards the area after this location. If you manage to get ahead of the large monster swimming underwater, you can knock them here, forcing them to come up to this location and fight you before they reach their intended location. It can be a good way to help circumvent or limit the time you fight Lagiacrus in its den where it is more dangerous. Here we see the large dam, another collapsible location that you can use to deal a large amount of environmental damage and get a knockdown on large monsters. We viewed this in the previous walk along if you would like to see it, but for now we're going to keep moving on as I don't want to retread ground too much. Up to the side here, another location that we visited before. It is a secret waterfall cave with not only a camping site, but some rare fish as well. This cave is not useful unless you are trying to farm those rare fish or just want a pleasant hangout spot. The mini ruins that you see in this location can be interacted with by having a monster crash into them, such as Goo, or you can take matters into your own hands, like we're about to do. I brought a big boom. Off to the side here is another, what I would consider viewing area or a very targeted farming location. Down here, you can find a few various flora to gather, as well as sometimes having a curious shell spawn. Though, besides that, there is not much reason to put a camp down here, as just north of here is a location better centralized for reaching the various locations within the Waterfall section of the Scarlet Forest. We're going to take another stroll all the way up, so there won't be too much to say again till we reach the top. We are now on the opposite side of the Scarlet Forest from when we started. So we will be sending the cahoots up so you can see how large of a ground we have covered. In the distance there, you can see the large structure that is within the Windward Plains. And that is approximately where we started, on that forest edge. Another large walking section, and if you haven't noticed, it is still fallow, but the waters are completely clear. That is because the sap is not as abundant here in the trees as it is down deeper in the forest. So we don't get that red hue to them. another Sacred Vine path, though strangely this one lets you walk up it. And glancing off to the side here of these ruins, we can see an awning that seems to be some sort of hollowed out logs or simply just the bark of a logs. You can see this technique done in a lot of locations in real life, and even some modern places where they will use bamboo shoots sliced in half to create a similar effect of roofing. Now we're going to follow these vines all the way down, and we should be getting fairly close to the Wudwud camp, as well as passing another campsite that I see very difficult to find a proper use for, given the proximity of the Wudwud Hideout, which the player can travel to all the time without needing a camp. And here's the jump I was talking about. Unfortunately, I missed the jump a little, but you can Yoshi your Sacrets perfectly all the way up here without having the need to climb the vines at all. And now that we're deeper in the forest again, you can see the red waters reappeared and get a glimpse of what this location looks like with that. And we've made it. We are at the Wudwud camp. While we're here, I might as well make note of a few little things the Wudwuds are doing. This one has decorated themselves with ancient Wyverian coins. Very cute. The other one here can be seen cleaning, I assume, cobwebs and other various things with what looks like a durian on a stick. Quite silly. This one has something in its sack. What is that? And that will do it for another walk along. This time a deep dive in the Scarlet Forest. I hope you don't feel as lost anymore as you did before watching this video. Wait, you're still lost? Yeah, I get it. Up here, another video. Down here, another video. Over here, subscribe. And thank you for watching. And thank you to my member. If you do want to support me additionally, you can become a member. And this is just an additional way to help me out. There won't be any video content locked behind this, as I want all my content to be available to everyone. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye.